since there are other relatives of these parties are also related parties in terms of the LODR, so they have not been exempted. So that that loophole has been plugged. Also, the fact that employees were inappropriately included earlier. They are not in related party, but they were in the earlier version, they were included. So they need to be excluded because employees are actually not the related party in terms of definition of LODR. Another technical point here has been the holding company in terms of Regulation 23(5), where some element of doubt has been there whether the term holding company refers to the listed holding company, and that through an explanation is made clear. So this is again for the purpose of removing ambiguity and bringing clarity. The next proposal relates to give a regulatory fillip to accredited investors in AIF. I think before that, let me first take up the IFSC issues. So as you know that if GIFT IFSCA, there have been many changes and enablement. Now, we already have, in terms of AIFs, a provision that now the IFSCA has made a request to enable retail scheme with resident Indian non-individual sponsor manager to register as FPIs. Now, this may be, this is already for AIFs, this is already permitted, now being permitted also for the retail schemes. Then the second one is the condition of resident Indian non-individual to be sponsor or manager of the FPI may be substituted with fund management entity or its associate for IFSC-based FPIs. This is to bring it in consistence with the IFSCA regulation. Then the maximum limit in contribution by resident Indian non-individual as FME or its associate in AIFs and retail schemes set up in IFSC may be specified at 10% of the corpus of the fund or of the AUM in case of retail schemes. This is actually varying in the FPI regulation, varying from the regulations of IFSCA. So this has been brought in alignment with that. Then overseas mutual funds and the trust, unit trust registering as FPI may be permitted to have Indian mutual funds as a constituent subject to the conditions as mentioned in the circular dated November 4, 2024. So we have already permitted, SEBI has already permitted the mutual funds to be constituent of the FPIs who are registered as overseas MFs who are registered as FPIs in IFSCA. But FPI regulations had not been amended. So this has been now amended to this will be amended to ensure that that particular dispensation will now will be made operational. Now the next scheme is to give a regulatory fillip to accredited investors in AIFs. If you please recall that in the last meeting we had press meet also, we had mentioned this, that accredited investors need to be, because they are investors who are, having three kinds of investors are there, as you know. AI, accredited investors can, the eligibility conditions are 7.5 crore net worth or out of which 50% is financial net worth, or 2 crore income, or 5 crore net worth plus 1 crore income. Either of the criteria, they can be called as accredited investors. They have to be registered. Now, we are now proposing a definition of, we are actually making amendments for the AIF regulations to provide for AI-only funds. That means the specific schemes for AI-only under the AIF. This will provide relaxations because AI we consider as who know the risks better, and AIF schemes, as you also know, that AIF window is more like for those who understand risk, they can come to the AIF. So therefore, we can provide for more relaxed dispensation regulation for AI-only funds, which includes exemption from pari passu requirement, extension of tenure to be permitted up to 5 years from 2 years, exemption from NISM certification requirement for key investment team of AIF manager, exemption from restriction on number of investors in a scheme. So then the second part of the proposal is that we have a large value funds where additional flexibilities are being extended, reduction of minimum investment amount in large value funds by investors from 70 crore Indian rupees to 25 crore Indian rupees, and exempting large value funds from responsibility on members if investment committee set up by manager of AIF to approve decisions of AIF. So another point is that we can provide option to existing AIF schemes to convert themselves to AI-only schemes or LVF schemes to avail the benefits subject to meeting conditions specified by SEBI. Now it's proposed to specify also through circular a certain benefits to the LVF. Now, these initiatives align with SEBI's long-term vision of ensuring that sophisticated investors with necessary risk appetite and understanding efficiently fund good quality capital raising by entrepreneurs and risk takers. Another important issue is that we are taking a staggered approach or glide path for transition of AI-only regime. And AI framework, we feel that, so it's proposed to have a gradual transition from minimum commitment threshold to only accreditation status as a metric of risk sophistication of investor. The next item is, we have a proposal to introduce single window automatic and generalized access for trusted foreign investors. We call it Swagat FI framework for FPIs and FPCIs. The purpose is to have a much more relaxed onboarding and compliance regime for certain set of FPIs who have been objectively identified through and they are really trust and verify principle. The identification criteria are government and government-related investors such as central banks, sovereign wealth funds, international or multilateral organizations, agencies including entities controlled or at least 75% directly or indirectly owned by such government and government-related investors. Second, appropriately regulated public retail funds with demonstrably diversified investor and investment base with independent fund managers as mandated by their home regulator. This could be appropriately regulated mutual funds and unit trust and they could also be appropriately regulated insurance companies or appropriately regulated pension funds. Pursuant to this approval today, SEBI, in consultation with industry, shall come out with a jurisdiction-wise list for above fund structures on the basis of trust but verified principles in line with the approach adopted earlier. Now, what do the relaxations that we'll have for Swagat FI framework? One, they'll be granted option to also register as FPCI without any further documentation. Second, FCI requirement that at least 66% of their investment should be in FCI eligible unlisted investment would not apply to Swagat FI entities, which means they can have a flexibility of how much they want to put in as unlisted investments in FCI eligible unlisted investments. Third, periodicity for continuance of registration and review of KYC of Swagat FI to be 10 years as opposed to 1 or 3 years for other FPIs currently. Fee of $2,500 shall be applicable for such 10-year period as opposed to 3-year period for other FPIs. Then the cap of 50% on aggregate NRI, OCI and RI contribution will be removed for Swagat FIs. Swagat FIs will be provided option to use a single demat account for holding securities acquired as FPI or FPCI or as foreign investors investing in units of investment vehicles. And depositories will provide for adequate tagging to identify the investment as FPI or FPCI or as a foreign investor investing in units of investment vehicles. Now, this is only actually a beginning, but eventually Swagat FI framework could pave the way to a broader remit covering other investment schedules of FEMA, which will require approval of the Government of India and the RBI separately. But what was possible within the SEBI's remit is being attempted here. Once more than 70% of total FPI AUC will then be accounted for by proposed FIs according to our estimate. This has also gone through FPI advisory committee and a public consultation process. I would also like to inform you, I think we can do it later or right now. So I think just for a break, because we move into other agenda, I would like to inform you that for the ease of doing business and to facilitate the availability of all the relevant information that may be useful for current and prospective FPIs across RBI, CBDT, SEBI regulations to access and transact. What has been really missing, and this has come out that, information is not in one place and we are not able to, there's no single website where information is available. So we are launching today the phase 1 of information website for foreign portfolio investors called www.indiamarketaccess.in. So I will invite Aparna to give you a little bit of a demonstration here of the website.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. So before I really go onward to the demonstration of what the website is about, I'll just give you a quick context on why we really ideated on a concept like this. So when we spoke to foreign portfolio investors, a clear feedback that really came through was that information that was relevant for them was available at multiple diverse locations, because the regulators, like in this case, if SEBI really takes care of the capital market side, Reserve Bank's requirements with respect to FEMA applies to them from a banking and when they're transacting in the country. They have requirements with respect to CBDT, the taxation regime, the laws apply for repatriation, tax filing, returns, all of them are again available in the DOR and CBDT regime. So we really thought it will be a good idea to put out, you have the stock exchanges and clearing corporations which come out with directions on trading and clearing and settlement aspects. So the idea is to really put out information that is relevant from a user perspective. From an FPI, what is the information that you would really be looking at, both for prospective applicants who are looking at India as a market and for existing FPIs? What is the information that they should really be looking at? If we can provide that as one central portal, that would be really the larger idea of what we thought we could go and achieve with this. Let me just quickly take you through the broad menus that we have over here. First question that would come at least to a prospective investment application, if you're looking at India as a market, is why India? So we thought we'll start off with some macroeconomic statistics in terms of the broad GDP numbers. We have the capital markets, the statistics with respect to Indian securities market that again is getting put out here. Who are the regulatory authorities whom they should be really knowing about? Few statistics on the fund flows on the for the FPIs. The SEBI bulletin that talks about capital market updates, more as a topical, region wise, what are the announcements that are put out from the capital market regulator? All that is covered here. Under market access, this is going to be a one-stop shop. So if you are looking at registering as an FPI, it has 3 sub-tabs which really take you through what all are the pre-investment readiness that you should really be looking at. For instance, if I go to the DDP tab, there are 17 DDP custodians who are registered with SEBI, and it will take you through the websites of each and every one of them. So depending on, it is more to really provide information at one place from where they can really navigate further. Likewise, you have a tab which is under guidance and tools. We have one, the document advisory tab will really take you through on a step-by-step process in terms of if you're looking at registering, what all are the processes that you really need to go through. The first stage is, of course, to approach your DDP or custodian that you will be appointing, and then move on to filling the common application form, which is again a one central form which will give the applicant his or her FPI registration, and move on to use for the PAN application, and then move on to use the same for their bank and demat accounts. The whole process is really explained in a visual manner. It is more to really demystify the rules of the game and put it in very simple non-legalese language for investors to understand and really orient themselves with terms that we often use in our country. Likewise, within market access, we also have a glossary. So there is one, maybe I can take you through the tracker tab. So in terms of registration applications, again, there are people who would want to know what is the status of their application. It will take you to the tracker portal, which has been put in place for really tracking the registration applications once it is done. So idea is to really provide all the necessary links and the URLs that they will have to really be otherwise navigating under multiple places. We thought we'll provide everything over here. Likewise, this will again be useful. So if you look at policy making at SEBI, there are large, like for example, if you look at the terms that we use in terms of the regulations, the circulars, the master circulars we have, which really consolidate the annual directions on a for each category of participant. And then you have the SOPs and implementation standards which are put out in this context for FPIs. It is the CDSSF. But really the terms like CDSSF or implementation standards, these are terms and concepts which are very unique to India. So we thought we'll really put it out here to explain to them. So the SOPs, if you look at all the implementation standards that have been created by SEBI in collaboration with CDSSF, these are things that apply to them at a ground level. So these are like nuts and bolts of every policy which really matter to them at a ground operating level. So we thought we will put out all the applicable operations, SOPs at one place, which should be useful to them. Likewise, you have one tab on taking them to the rules under FEMA, which really again apply. So there are different frameworks under FEMA. If you're looking at an equity investment or if you're looking at a debt investment, there are again different frameworks. There is a separate framework for mode of payment that RBI has really come out with. So all of it is really getting aggregated at one place. Maybe the last tab I'll just take you to could be Connect with Us, where we have a very active FPI outreach cell at SEBI, where we engage directly with foreign portfolio investors and we take them through in terms of understanding what the requirements are if they're looking at operating in India. So we have for instance, if this reach out to SEBI, if you just click here, it will take you to a free text form where applicants can reach out to us directly. We have a designated email ID, which is again displayed in the screen, and it is an ongoing dialogue that we even today have. So idea is again put this also as a forum where they can reach out to SEBI for any ongoing assistance that they might need. So that's largely about it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Continuing, the next decision was to review the classification of REIT. So it has been decided that the REITs may be reclassified as equity for the purpose of investments by specified mutual funds and specialized investment funds. As regards the InvITs, the same may continue to be classified as hybrid instruments for the purpose of investment by mutual funds as well as SIFs. The current investment limits of eligible schemes of mutual funds and SIFs for investment in InvITs would get freed up as a consequence of equity classification of REITs. Accordingly, there would be no further need to increase the current limit as earlier proposed, as it was earlier proposed in the consultation paper. Now, there would also be appropriate glide path to ensure that there is no disruption through this change. So SEBI will work with industry to have an appropriate glide path. The next is amendment to SEBI Mutual Fund Regulations 1996 to facilitate enhanced investor protection and financial inclusion. The extent provisions presently permit a maximum exit load of 5%, and reducing the maximum exit load would align the regulatory requirement with the prevailing industry practice. So therefore, it is proposed that the exit load of the open-ended scheme may be lowered to a maximum permissible limit of 3%. Now, the issue is that here it is a maximum limit, not that, that will be charged as it is. Because prevailing exit loads are typically range between 1% to 2%. But this is a cap, so as to align with the prevailing industry practice. The second part of the proposal is that expenses towards incentive for new inflows from B30 cities are not charged by AMC to all schemes uniformly. The existing structure where incentives are based on a percentage of daily assets was prone to misuse and churning of investments by distributors. So therefore, now to clarify, the distributors now will be additionally incentivized only for investment inflows from new individual investors from B30 cities, that means new PAN. At the industry level, capping of such additional incentive at 1% of the first application amount if the investor remains invested for 1 year in case of lump sum, and total investment made during the period of first year in case of SIP. And the maximum amount of incentive is 2,000 rupees. Now, additional distribution commission may be paid from the Investor Education and Awareness Fund aggregated at the level of AMC. And once the AMC level fund is exhausted, would be paid out of the Investor Education Awareness Fund pooled at the level of MP. So therefore, there will be no extra charge onto the schemes. It will be from the existing funds. The important thing is that the incentive for distributors for bringing in new women investors shall be paid for everyone. It's not only for the B30 incentive, it will be for all over India, which means that it will be even for top 30 cities also, this will be applicable. So for women, for any new PAN, this incentive will be payable for the distributors. So it will actually provide more financial inclusion of women in mutual fund space. The next item is that ease of doing business for entities having listed non-convertible securities. This is basically an issue of some relaxation where hard copy of statement used to be provided, where the soft copy can be provided, and if someone doesn't have an email ID, then a letter can go and a link can be provided, so that business will be facilitated. And also wherever it's also linked to the other companies also now that. So there are certain other companies where timelines. Yes. In terms of timelines also, there are some statutory organizations which are not companies. They have a different timelines. For example, NABARD or NHAI. They don't have that kind of timeline as the company's timelines are in terms of AGMs, etc. There, we are saying that the timelines will be as per the timelines in their respective statute. So this is basically an ease of doing business for them in terms of sending the annual reports. The next is the expanding the scope of strategic investor in the InvIT regulations and REIT regulations. Now, you're aware that the strategic investor is more it's more akin to, similar to anchor investor in the IPO. The strategic investor has been there which have got certain lock-in requirements, and they can come in and give confidence to the retail investors prior to the issue. The list is now going to be expanded. So now the strategic investor will mean an institutional investor or foreign portfolio investors not covered under subclause A, or a middle layer, upper layer, and top layer non-banking finance company. And basically, we are expanding the list of possible investors, of strategic investors, so as to provide greater opportunity for support to the InvIT and REIT. Then the next question, the next item is regarding some of the improving our response, regulatory response and outreach in India by establishing adequate physical local presence at various state capitals or cities. As you know that there is a multiple responsibilities that SEBI has on not only investor awareness, also regulation of market, as well as promotion of markets. And it's not possible always to do it from Mumbai or 4 regional offices and 1 local office at Indore. We have got outside of Mumbai, we have got only physical presence of our offices only at 5 places. Rest of the places, there are investor service centers maintained by the exchanges, but those are more in the nature of doing investor queries and so on. I think we have received actually a number of representations that greater presence of SEBI on the ground will be helpful from various angles which we are there. Investor awareness is also a very important issue, as well also the investor protection. So therefore, there is a decision to start establishing local offices, state capital, other cities in a graded manner. So in phase 1, we will be setting up offices in Chandigarh, Jaipur, Lucknow, Guwahati, Bhubaneswar, Vijayawada, Hyderabad, and Bengaluru. And then phase 2 will be Jammu, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Tripura, and Kerala. And phase 3 will be the remaining states and union territories and large states and so on. There will be headed by a DGM or a GM level officer. On an average, at least 3 officers at different levels, and the staffing to be based on needs of location. And we'll try to see that most of the officials, at least half of them, should be conversant with local language. It's very important to us to get in touch with the regional languages in terms of communication as well as physical presence, where the people will be able to service the investors in a better manner. The next item is the review of regulatory framework for registrar to an issue and share transfer agents. Now, this is, as you know, that the role of RTA as share transfer agent was critical in the past when the shares were held in physical forms. Over a period of time, the role of RTAs has changed considerably. SEBI has, from April 1, 2019, SEBI has discontinued transfer of securities of listed companies in physical form. And thus, as a share transfer agent, role of RTAs has been limited to issuance of letter of confirmation in respect of request received, and so on. But they have also been doing a lot of work for relating to unlisted companies as their agents, and also in terms of certain tasks which the companies are required to do under the company's law. They also use the RTAs for that. However, it is important to have the clarification, proper clarification in terms of what SEBI regulates and what SEBI doesn't regulate, as also to change the name, because now we are going to have only a RTA. Instead of RTA and share transfer agent, instead of two different things, we would have the name as RTA. So we are bringing in RTA regulations 2025, where we will introduce the activity-based regulations for RTAs, and which will do away with the categorization of RTAs. There will be common definition of RTAs in place of existing separate definition for registrar to an issue as well as share transfer agent, net worth requirement for RTAs, and revision in fee structure for RTAs, and also for changing the the net worth definition of RTA, which was old, to make it align with the company's law definition. Also provide for institutional mechanism for RTAs. The next proposal is in terms of ease of doing business for investment advisors and research analysts. As you're aware that this subject has been engaging the attention of SEBI for some time. There have been some changes earlier in the past, but further facilitation was necessary in terms of expanding the number of IAs and RAs so that registered advisors are available instead of the investors looking for unsolicited and sometimes incorrect advice from some of the influencers who are not registered. And this ecosystem needs to be developed. So it has been now decided to bring in a few changes to facilitate. One is permitting IAs and RAs to provide past performance certified by chartered accountant and CMAs to clients, including prospective clients, in one-on-one communication with appropriate disclaimer. And this will be for a transitory period. As you know, that PARVA system is going to be implemented, and but this will take time. First, you have to start volunteering for it, and then the performance will be built up through a third-party certification. Then obviously, then it will be available based on third-party certification going forward. But in the meanwhile, and as a transitory phase, for a period of only for a period of 2 years, this relaxation is being provided that they may do it, but this should not be advertised. This performance will not be advertised, but it can be given to clients on one-on-one basis. The second part is that allowing IAs to charge fees under asset under advice, base fee up to 2.5% of assets value per annum from clients for providing second opinion to clients, which has been on demand on pre-distributed assets, subject to annual consent of clients and disclosure to clients regarding incidence of dual charges, that is advisory fee as well as cost towards distributors' commission. Easing the compulsory corporatization process for individual IAs by enabling them acquire new business during transitioning period and by providing extended timeline for transition. Relaxation in education criteria for IAs and RAs to allow graduate in any field to register as IARA and to allow accreditation of any courses by NISM as alternative to NISM certification examination, which means that NISM itself, apart from its own certification examination, can also allow accreditation of some of the courses, which if they do, they will be meeting the criteria. Relaxing the requirement of submission of proof of address, CIBIL support, details of infrastructure, etc. for seeking registration. I think some of the requirements are considered onerous, and also due to which I think they are not accessing and applying for registration. So this has been basically an ease of doing business in order to promote the business of investment advisors and registered investment advisors and RTAs. The last item which I am going to discuss in this press conference is provisions relating to strengthening governance of MIIs. Market infrastructure institutions are very important, that they are critically important for our market. We have also a system of public interest directors in place, PIDs. And their governance is also the majority of the board has to be the PIDs. In continuation of our exercise to strengthen governance of MIIs, the regulations are being amended to ensure that there will be appointment of 2 executive directors as heads of vertical 1 and vertical 2. Vertical 1 will be critical operations. Vertical 2 will be risk compliance and investor grievances of an MI. Then we are also defining roles and responsibilities of MDs and specific KMPs, and prescribing norms on directorships of MDs and EDs of an MI in companies other than subsidiaries. So these were the decisions taken today. Now, I think you can ask the questions. I will request my colleagues also in respect of the questions. Mostly, they will be taking further clarifying on any questions on around these items.
Yes. We can start from Ms. Sneha Joshi. You want to? Okay.
Hi, sir. Ankur Mishra from ET now. First and foremost, I want to congratulate the committee for the elaborate discussion. As everything what was there earlier, what is there now. Thank you for that. To start with, I want to understand that the performance validation against you. And you mentioned that 2-year timeline will be given for that relaxation. Do you expect that time also for performance validation against you that operational, or it may be happening earlier? Second thing, sir, on 21st of August, you mentioned about longer term derivatives contract that is in ideation. While consultation papers may come later, is it still in ideation stage? Has there any work which has been done? And was it even considered by SEBI board at all?
I think the most key question, this one, I will address the last, because many people will ask that question. Let us address the other questions in the meanwhile. So I'll request my colleague Kamlesh to answer about Parva.
So it is the real
paper is risk return verification. So that is principal approval has been given, and very soon it will be operationalized. So the reason behind this relaxation is that you will only be, if I am an IA or RA, I will only get my prospective transactions verified by Parva. Now, what happens to my past transactions? Because prospective transactions, maybe after 1 year, my 1 year transactions are verified, then I can advertise that 1 year performance. But what do I do till that time? Therefore, this share with the certified your performance, certified by CA or relaxation is only, you know, will be optional to
Actually, whenever the rules are made, they are approved by the minister and then placed in the parliament. And in the parliament, they have to be there in certain number of days, much like our regulations also. So they are, the rules means that the parliament has given the powers to the government to frame the rules, and then they have to be placed in the parliament, so that if there is anyone has an objection, that can be taken on board. So it will follow the same process.
Also, is there any change between discussion paper and what has come right now? I can see more categories, but it is more of a no-change kind of scenario. So you can specify if there any deviation which has been there from discussion?
No, there is no change. There is no change.
Hello, sir.
I think that we had people largely welcomed it, so we didn't have to change it.
Good evening to everyone on the board. Sir, a couple of questions. One with respect
Sir, please
to,
mention your name.
my name is Yash Jain. I am from CNBC TV 18. Just a couple of questions, sir. You made certain changes, of course, when it comes to the minimum public shareholding, minimum public offer, when it comes to IPO. Just for the sake of clarity, could this also be taken retrospectively? That certain large issues which have come recently who would want to avail a longer time to reach that minimum public shareholding mark? One. Second one, with respect to the reservation quota for life insurance companies and pension funds. In that case, what if they don't find enough life insurance companies and pension funds to subscribe? Could that be then subjectively taken care by them to other investors? And finally, sir, the last point that you made with respect to the governance standards for market infrastructure institutions. Could this now, since it's approved, become a precursor for a lot of corporate activities which exchanges may be planning to take, like in case an IPO or something?
So the first one you said about the
6.7%.
yes,
Retrospective.
yeah, yeah. It is not a retrospect. The point is that the word right is that those who are not there, it will be applicable for everyone. Like it is not really applicable for only those who are, new issues, because they come into the same category, but their post issue has to be counted from the date of their listing, not now. So when we say whether which category they fall, because it is the post issue market cap. So post issue market cap cannot be today's market cap. Yes, at the time of listing, post listing. The second, you had mentioned about the 40%. So where if there is it can be filled up by the mutual funds. Yeah. No, it isn't. No, it won't, because here also we are providing them the time. There will be a glide path, because you can't have ED suddenly, immediately. So there will be a glide path which will be given, 6 months and others. So it is going forward, we will see that it is implemented over a period of time. So, but it does not stop any corporate action.
Hi, sir. Sajid here from ET Now. Two questions on mutual fund. You've classified mutual fund as equity while you retained InvITs as hybrid. Both the category of investments or securities are normally our distribution income categories. What is the reason, why one has been classified as equity and others as a hybrid? And the second one is that you brought back from, I would say, the mutual fund the paper which in 2023 went into a back burner and took only two of it. Is it to assume that now that you've got the feedback from the industry, the other proposals will also be taken into consideration?
So I will, Amarjeet will respond to your questions. I'll request him.
So on the first one, see, when we consulted, we proposed equity classification for both REITs and InvITs. But we've gone by the public consultation, by the feedback that we've received. So in the first stage, we will consider only REITs as equity. And going forward, we will look at the InvIT also. We don't want to be disruptive. And also, if you look at the InvIT industry, most of the InvITs are private listed. Only 4 are public listed. Also, if you look at the features of InvITs, there are relatively more stable cash flows. So they are not so close to equity as REITs could be. These are the reasons for not considering immediately as the equity classification. And the second question,
the discussion paper which went into the back burner and now come back again.
that is still under exam.
So, so last time when you spoke about it, you said that you're seeking fresh data from the industry, and based on that, you will come back with a fresh discussion paper.
Yeah.
So that discussion paper is not out, but you've taken few items from that discussion paper and brought to the
So
board.
we are dealing with the elements which are more acceptable and controversial. If you remember last year, we had some pushback from the industry on some of the proposals as a result of the consultation. Then we decided we'll re-examine and come back with a fresh paper. So it's not off the table, but we are still examining.
So when is that discussion paper going to come back?
I think
Sir,
just in jest, I will add that we could be tempted to say that the back burner will become front runner, but we cannot use that term in SEBI, front running.
Sir, Yatin from CNBC Awaz. Sir, question on the Jane Street matter and several hedge funds that SEBI is examining. There is also an order already. Two questions. Number one is the regulator also looking at Bombay Stock Exchange, because you have found one part to be manipulative in nature on the National Stock Exchange with respect to trading done by the hedge fund there. With respect to BSE, Sensex options and futures, is there something that you are trying to communicate? And the other part is that if SEBI found out in its investigation that there was manipulation indeed, what is the role of the exchanges? Because if the period was so large, the exchanges will also notice such unusual trading pattern. So is the regulator also, because there is obviously a conflict of interest, because transaction fees is one of the largest revenue stream for any exchange. They don't want any client not to trade. They want every client to trade for them to make profits. So there is obviously a conflict of interest when you talk about manipulation or raising alarms at their level. So the question was really, is SEBI also talking to stock exchanges because there were lapses on their part, both NSE or BSE, or just wanted your thoughts on the entire matter.
So first of all, actually, my thoughts cannot actually go out in a press conference in relating to an investigation. That will be actually undesirable, because there is an investigation going on one the hand, and there is a SAT case on the other, and we are supposed to be replying to the SAT. So therefore, I think we should not talk in terms of these investigation cases in front of the camera.
No, sir, but if you talk about such instances, right, in general, sir, are you investigating? Because I'm talking about a
Off the
specific case.
camera, my conscience doesn't allow it.
But sir, क्वेश्चन ये था कि अगर मैनिपुलेशन हो रहा है तो स्टॉक एक्सचेंजेस का ऑब्वियसली कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है, तो उसको आप किस तरीके से देखते हैं? मेरा सवाल, मैं आपको ये नहीं बोल रहा हूँ आप कमेंट करिए जेन स्ट्रीट के ऊपर, बट जनरल सिनेरियो जब आपने मैनिपुलेशन पाया है आपके ऑर्डर में, ऑब्वियसली इट इज इन द पब्लिक डोमेन. आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट a matter which is sub judice, but in general, how do we approach such situations wherein there is a conflict of interest, number one, and number two, you have investigated one exchange, one trading pattern. What about the other exchange? Is it under investigation, or would you like to talk on this matter?
That is exactly what I'm saying. I cannot reveal you the investigation, what's going on in the investigation. It is not permissible. Let the investigation be, because these are confidential matters, and then they are revealed and all that. What is being stated will be stated in the SAT in terms of whatever Jane Street had. They have every right. That time also I had said that everyone has in our democratic system, under the laws, everyone has a right for redressal, as much as regulator also has a right to reply and response. So we will stop it at that. And we will also not like to conjecture on, who is what is the thing. In general, see, if you look at the conflict of interest issue, has to be resolved through regulatory action. As a regulator, because otherwise, you could also say that SEBI also draws some of the sustenance from those trading activities in terms of certain fees which comes in. Now, then the whole structure will fall. If you say that the SEBI draws some money as fees from the filings that they do in IPO, so which means that we are clearing IPO just like that because we have to have more of fees. So you have to see, every order speaks for itself. If there is a manipulation, if there is a thing, if you look at the interim order of the WTM, it specifies all those things. So for outcome you have to see. And that outcome has to be replied to if someone doesn't have any. So what is the thing? You are saying, you please reply. Then someone has to reply that. So that is where it is. In between, someone says more documents and less documents. SEBI may have given all kinds of documents. So, but that we have to tell in the court. Because some of the stories which have come out also, I'm sorry to say, they're not verified stories. Like they are factually incorrect stories.
सवाल है जिस पूरा देश उसके ऊपर इंतजार कर रहा है आपके व्यू जानने के लिए सर. सर, जिस तरह से आप पिछले हर कुछ दिनों में खबर आती है कि सेबी की तैयारी है लॉन्गर ड्यूरेशन की एक्सपायरी की, वीकली एक्सपायरी में कुछ हो जाएगा. कई बार जो आपके बयान होते हैं उससे भी कंफ्यूजन हो जाता है सेबी के अधिकारियों के बयानों से, और उसी को लेकर सर कई सारे लोगों के मन में जिज्ञासा है और ये जिज्ञासा बढ़ती जा रही है. तो इस पर कब विराम लगेगा, क्योंकि हर 15 दिन में ये खबर आ जाती है और बहुत लोगों की धड़कनें तेज हो जाती है, मार्केट में भी रिएक्शन हो जाता है. और सर उसी से जुड़ा हुआ सवाल, जो आप ही का सेबी का ही डेटा आया जहां पर एफएनओ में लोगों का जो नुकसान है उसमें 90% से और बढ़ोतरी होगी, और जिन लोगों का नुकसान हुआ, आम आदमी का नुकसान हुआ, टैक्सी ड्राइवर्स का नुकसान हुआ, तो कुछ उन लोगों से हमने बात करी तो उनका भी ये कहना है कि सेबी ने जो कुछ वीकली एक्सपायरी को बंद किया, तो वो अगर हम पहले कर दिया होता तो हमारा जो सब कुछ कमाया हुआ चला गया वो नहीं जाता, और आगे चल के भी सेबी को जो बाकी वीकली एक्सपायरी है वो बंद करनी चाहिए. तो सर आपको भी सेबी के मुखिया के तौर पर लगता है क्या, जो कि गरीब लोग हैं, निचले तबके के लोग हैं, उनका जो नुकसान हुआ, कुछ ऐसे मापदंड होने चाहिए जिससे जो समाज का निचला वर्ग है उनको नुकसान से बचाया जा सके?
आपके सुझाव के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. लेकिन नहीं, मैं ये हंसने की बात नहीं है, मैं आपके सुझावों का बिल्कुल स्वागत करता हूँ, और एज मच एज दिस, इस विषय में स्पेकुलेशन बहुत मीडिया की तरफ से भी अननेसेसरी हो रही है। एक हमने स्टेटमेंट दिया था, हम उससे क्या हम करेंगे वो भी हमने बताया था। अब यदि हम उसको डे टू डे की तरह कमेंट्री की तरह ले लें, मतलब 5 डे ले लें, फिर ओडीआई ले लें, फिर T20 की तरह ले लें, यदि कमेंट्री ही चलती रहेगी तो वो ठीक नहीं है। क्योंकि हमने ये कहा था कि जो हम उस पर यदि हम विचार करेंगे तो विचार में समय भी लगेगा, क्योंकि कॉम्प्लेक्स इशू है, इसमें कई सारी चीज़ों को बैलेंस करना है, और उस इशू के बारे में हम कैसे आगे बढ़ सकते हैं यदि हम लोग अपने आप ही खुद क्लियर नहीं होंगे अभी डिफरेंट ऑप्शंस में, तो हम कैसे, हमने कहा था कि हम कंसल्टेशन पेपर लाएंगे। अब आपका कंजेक्चर ये चल रहा है कि कल कंसल्टेशन पेपर आ रहा है, आज बोर्ड में डिसीजन हो रहा है, ये सब चीजें सब अपनी तरफ से चला रहे हैं, किसी ने हमसे चेक नहीं किया कि बोर्ड में इसके बारे में डिस्कशन है कि नहीं। और वैसे भी हम रोज के रोज की में हम अपना काम करें कि हम रोज यही बताते रहें कि आज हम नहीं बना रहे हैं, कल आएगा। आपको हम बताएंगे, हम जितना सेबी ट्रांसपेरेंटली मीडिया से बात करता है या भारत की जनता से बात करता है, उससे अधिक हम क्या करेंगे। हम हर चीज डिसीजन लाने से पहले हम कंसल्टेशन पेपर लाते हैं, उसमें भी हर प्रपोजल पे हम कमेंट लेते हैं, प्रपोजल वाइज लेते हैं, उसके बाद हम उसका अध्ययन करते हैं और फिर हम अपने रेगुलेशंस लाते हैं। तो हम सब तरह के फीडबैक लेते हुए काम करते हैं, लेकिन हम रोज रोज के रूप में हम कमेंट, मीडिया के कमेंट्स को नहीं ले सकते कि आप ये कब ला रहे हैं, ये कल आने वाला है, ये परसों आने वाला है। कोई भी इसमें होगा वो हम कह चुके हैं कि वो उसके बारे में हम लोग लाएंगे, कंसल्टेशन करेंगे, उसके बाद उसको किस रूप में आगे बढ़ना है बढ़ेंगे, क्योंकि ये जटिल प्रश्न है। वो हमने कहा है, वो हमने कहा है। आप कुछ दिनों के लिए हमें माफ कर दीजिए बस जिससे कि हम उस पर कुछ मेहनत कर सकें।
Hi, sir. Sir, good evening, sir. So, Khushbu Tiwari from Business Standard. So, just one question on the governance for MIIs. One portion in the consultation paper that had raised some concerns was reporting of EDs separately in the absence of MDs. That part I did not see in the, I think, final one, I think. So, what is the stance that, like, because there were concerns about how that may create certain power centers within the MIIs. So, is that being considered?
There is no such proposal that the EDs will report separately and not through MDs.
No, no, no. So there was one that the certain meetings with certain committees will be held in the absence of MDs and only with the EDs in certain verticals.
नहीं, वो तो अभी भी है कि MPs बातें करते हैं कमेटी से।
So no, because the appointment of EDs is a new thing. That is why
नहीं,
I'm asking.
EDs will be reporting to MDs. We are not really saying that the EDs will not report to MDs. The command and structure of any organization will be maintained.
So they will still, because the appointments are new.
देखिए उसमें क्या है कि एक कमेटी का अलग रोल है, वहाँ रिस्क कमेटी अलग है, क्योंकि PIDs हैं, वो भी PIDs से होते हैं, रिस्क कमेटी अलग है, टेक्नोलॉजी कमेटी अलग है, तो उनमें वो लोग बात करते हैं उसमें, क्योंकि ये एक स्ट्रक्चरली जो मार्केट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इंस्टीट्यूशन है, एक नॉर्मल कंपनी से अलग है।
Just one last question on Choti SIP, because there has been a little, the uptick from the markets has been a little low. So any further discussions or with the market, with the MF players to boost it? Obviously today you announced certain incentives for distributors and all. So anything on that?
Yeah, I'll respond to that. It's a relatively new initiative. It takes time, so we are in touch with the industry, and you are right, numbers are not that impressive. But it will take some time, and we are in touch with the industry. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
So Ekta from Z Business. सर म्यूचुअल फंड्स के लिए जो आपने इंसेंटिवाइज करने का ये जो प्रपोजल लेकर आए हैं आप, ये पहले बंद हो गया था, अब इसे दोबारा शुरू करने के पीछे कोई खास वजह? and I know आप शायद ये बोलेंगे कि नाक उल्टा पकड़ा है सीधा पकड़ा है, but is it like also kind of trying to tell tier 2 tier 3 cities में लोगों को कि wealth जो है FNO से ही नहीं बनती, म्यूचुअल फंड से भी बनती है, क्योंकि म्यूचुअल फंड सही है बहुत पॉपुलर हुआ, लेकिन जितने अकाउंट्स ऑनलाइन गेमिंग के धड़ल्ले से खुले उतने म्यूचुअल फंड्स नहीं आए। तो कहीं ना कहीं लोगों को ये सिखाना कि म्यूचुअल फंड से भी वेल्थ बनती है, अ काइंड ऑफ लाइक इन अ सटल वे एंड इनिशिएटिव।
नहीं, आप सही कह रही हैं कि इसमें हमें बहुत काम करने की ज़रूरत है, क्योंकि यदि हम देखें अभी हमारी 9.5% ऑफ पॉपुलेशन जो है वो सिक्योरिटी मार्केट में इन्वेस्टेड है। इस बीच में हमने एक बहुत बड़ा सर्वे भी किया है, और वो बहुत शीघ्र, मे बी इन अ मैटर ऑफ फ्यू डेज, वो सर्वे आपके समक्ष होगा, हम उसको पब्लिक भी करेंगे। उस सर्वे, वो लार्ज सर्वे है और पहली बार इस तरह का सर्वे हुआ है, और उस सर्वे में बहुत सारी चीज़ें सामने आ रही हैं कि हमको इन्वेस्टर अवेयरनेस की दिशा में किस तरह से आगे बढ़ना है। मतलब रीजन्स के हिसाब से बढ़ना है, जोग्राफीज हैं, जेंडर है, और किस तरह के प्रोडक्ट, किस तरह का टाइप ऑफ मीडियम होना चाहिए। तो बहुत सारे इश्यूज जो हैं, हम ये समझ रहे हैं कि जो हमारी इन्वेस्टमेंट अवेयरनेस की स्ट्रैटेजी है, जो कि अभी आपने देखा होगा जैसे सेबी वर्सेस स्कैम चल रहा है, इस तरह से देयर सीरीज में हम लोग काम करेंगे एक साथ मिलके, लेकिन उसको इस तरह से करेंगे कि वो जो आउटकम्स हैं वो हम अचीव कर पाए। और ये तो क्लियरली ये है कि हम ये कह रहे हैं कि विमेन को लाएं, लेकिन वो विमेन नहीं जो ऑलरेडी आ चुकी हैं। इंसेंटिव उनको हो जाना चाहिए जो न्यू पैन से आ रही है। तो वो एक इस दिशा में ये है कि लेट्स हैव more number of women into the mutual fund sector.
Sir, that's the clarity I want. How will you determine the person who's coming is a new investor?
New
Because
PAN.
New PAN in the sense, even AMFI doesn't know how many unique investors are there in a mutual fund, and they say that they have to collect data from multiple mutual funds, AMCs to determine that. And you are saying that at the distributor level, the incentive will go to that person if there is a new PAN.
No, this is quite possible. The data is available.
It's not available, sir.
5.6 crore hai.
That is a aggregate, but new PAN, if one person is going to an AMC and one other and subsequently is going to B, it's not a new PAN. He's already invested in one AMC.
नहीं, new PAN, fresh PAN across the वो होगा industry, across the industry.
And how will you determine that?
ये तो हम आराम से चेक कर सकते हैं। अभी आप यदि अपनी ऐप खोलेंगे और वैसे ही आपको पता लग जाता है, यदि आप अपनी ऐप खोलोगे CDSL की या NSDL की, उसमें आप उनकी ऐप में देखिए, आपको कंसोलिडेटेड व्यू हर आदमी का मिल रहा है उसमें, पैन वाइज। ये आपका पैन है, उस हिसाब से आपको म्यूचुअल फंड और डीमैट पूरा आपको अकाउंट मिल रहा है। दोबारा करने की बात नहीं है।
दोबारा सर, एक्चुअली व्हाट शी मींस इज कि हमने पहले सस्पेंड कर दिया था ऑन द B30, लुकिंग एट सम मिसयूज, इफ आई कैन कॉल इट, इन द सेंस कि 2 लाख तक का मिलता था पहले, तो वो लोग स्प्लिट कर लेते थे एप्लीकेशन। 10 लाख किसी को लगाना है तो 2 लाख की 5 एप्लीकेशन लगा देता था। तो उस तरह का कुछ हमारे नोटिस में आया, तो हमने उसको सस्पेंड किया था। सी आइडिया इज एट अ लार्ज, लुक एट द लार्जर पिक्चर। एज चेयरमैन मेंशन्ड, 5.6 करोड़ यूनिक इन्वेस्टर्स इन म्यूचुअल फंड। B30 से जो हमारी AUM आती है, एसेट अंडर मैनेजमेंट, दैट इज ओनली अबाउट 17-18%. So there is a tremendous scope for adding more new investors determined by new PAN. And the interesting thing in this proposal is, for women investor, we are not even saying beyond 30. Even Bombay-based woman who's not invested can invest on the basis of the new PAN, and this incentive will be given to the distributor.
तो ये खाली B30 के लिए नहीं है, T30 के लिए भी है, so far as the women are concerned.
Sir, this is
mis-selling क्या?
Actually, it is better. People are being sold very, products which are not good for them. We know it, right? Mutual fund is so well regulated. And if a distributor is giving a scheme, and also we are capping the incentive. It is only 2,000 rupees a year. I mean, if the investor stays
और
invested for a year.
वो भी 1 साल का वो invested रहे.
So those checks and balances are there, and in case there is any misuse, we'll definitely take note of that.
So this is Ben from the New Business Press. This is about the large IPO, changes in the large IPO issues. Is it prospective or only after this will be applicable only for the new issues that you approve? Or those who are even a large issue is likely to be in the market soon?
No, when these are the amendments to the SCRR. There are two kinds of amendments. Anchor is here in the SEBI ICTR, which can be done by us, subject to the legal requirements of amending the regulation. The second thing is about SCRR. SCRR changes we are recommending to the government. And then the government has to do its own rule-making process under the SCRR, which means that a view is to be taken by the government, and then those rules can be, the draft rules we are already recommending.
Hi, Chief. Chiranjeevi from Bloomberg News. First of all, just one clarity on the Swagat FI. This will be implemented for both debt and equity investors, right? Because the proposal included both debt and equity. I couldn't find the mention here. So can we assume that it's for both?
Yeah, this is for an FA registration.
Understood. So in both markets, like across, great. And just digressing from the board proposal, recently there was a circular that was brought in for implementation of intraday sort of position limits on the derivative side, capped at about 50 billion rupees or 5,000 odd crores. In your previous iteration of the circular, you had dropped that idea, citing, of course, that there was no requirement for such a measure, given that the gross positions could do the job, and you did not want to stifle the, the market. Can I understand what has changed since May 29th and between, August, that sort of made you or motivated you to bring this back?
Am I audible? So just one small correction. If you see the May 29 circular, what we said is that there will be intraday monitoring by the exchanges. We are not specifying any specific limits, but there will be triggers which will be agreed between SEBI and the exchanges, beyond which the exchanges would be required to undertake surveillance and make sure that there is nothing wrong happening. That was the broad philosophy behind the May 29 circular. Thereafter, we've been having discussions with the exchanges, and in fact, the feedback that came and emerged was that it is probably better on expiry day to set certain hard limits rather than have these soft limits which the exchanges will look like. So when we were going through the implementation for this particular issue, that's when this discussion happened. So what we've done is, on outside of expiry days, we've kept it as a kind of a soft limit, but on expiry day, we've put it as a hard limit for a easier, smoother implementation.
So can I ask one question? Charu Singh from NDTV Profit. So it's a little away from the proposals that have been approved today. First thing that I want to ask is, on June 27th, SEBI had come out with a media release. It was in response to a lot of news articles that had been circulated about pump and dump related search and seizures being conducted in several locations. Now, since then there were other reports as well showing that the extent of the search and seizures were quite broad, and there were serious issues with the locations and the companies and the scripts that were being investigated. Can we please understand what is the status of that investigation, if we can expect an order anytime soon? And there's one more question, that is, the chairperson mentioned at an event recently about facilitating, actually considering about a platform for pre-listing trading. Has there been any discussions with depositories or other market infra institutions about the same?
I think on the first question, it is, sorry, I mean, we would not be able to give you only work on investigation, because search, seizure, investigation, and the order will be out. It will depend upon what is the outcome which comes out of that particular thing. So And there are teams, and in SEBI, there are independent teams to work, and they have their own professional work to do, which we don't interfere. Second, on that issue of pre-IPO, I think there is a lot of work to be done on that, because this was an idea, a concept. And in order to work out, we have to work out with different stakeholders, and we are still under discussion, and will take some time to, crystallize how we will implement it.
Sir, with respect to strategic investors in REIT and InvIT, you added a category called family trusts and intermediaries registered with the board. So are you going to come out with regulations for registration of family offices, family trust with the board?
This is already there now in the earlier REIT.
It was not there. So we have added family trust and intermediaries registered.
Yes. So are you going to come out with the regulations for registration of family trusts and intermediaries?
No, you're talking of trusts.
Yes, sir. We will check on that. We'll check
In
on that.
fact, there was in a previous press conference, if I may just add to what Sajid said, in a previous press conference, it was said that SEBI would consider a framework for registering family offices and trusts because of the proliferation of family offices, the kinds of investments they're making, and the larger role they're playing in the, sort of the investment economy. Is there any work that has or progress on that at all, sir?
Can I just offer one clarification, with your permission? What we mean here is family trust separate and intermediaries registered with the board. So we're talking about intermediaries who are registered with the board, and family trust is just a separate notion by itself. We're not intending to register.
And they are even now permitted. They are even now permitted under REITs, family trusts, as strategic investors.
Could you respond to my question? Is there any progress at all in SEBI maybe thinking of a framework for family offices, family trusts, whether they're single family offices or multi-family offices? There was some discussion around this in previous
No,
press
nothing at
conference.
all.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, I wanted to ask that is SEBI considering a reduction of the PMS ticket size, because there were news that from 50 they want, PMS has reached out to the regulator. And secondly, Ekta ji has already asked this 250 rupee SIP, why is not really picking up the traction. And you said that, it's just begun and it's going to go forward with more. Also on ONDC platforms, a lot of AMCs are also, going on ONDC platforms to give SIP smaller amounts so that people can start investing. So what's any development on that? Will it become more, will the AMCs also want to pick it up? Other AMCs? And also one question that for SIFs, the big PMS players, why aren't they allowed to, open SIFs? Because they do have a track record of, giving good returns to the affluent class, which is the target of SIFs, the 10 lakh rupee ticket size. So, the regulation says that 5 years of mutual fund is important for an SIF license. So, anything on that will the PMS players be allowed or not? Because a lot of PMS players are now taking MF licenses.
So see, we never said that PMS kind of players cannot offer SIF. All that we said was they have to come through the mutual fund route. So this was discussed and debated a lot when we came out with the SIF framework. On your first question in terms of any plans to reduce the threshold for PMS investment, no such proposal as of now, although you are right, we have received a proposal, but we will see. I mean, there is no such immediate proposal to do that. And ONDC, some AMCs are using, that's a welcome thing. Other AMCs can also use. I mean, we really don't come into picture there as such. And you asked one more question, I forget the SIP. Micro SIP, I already responded. As I said,
Just begun and
it will
question, one last question. So मुझे अभी हम weekly expiry के ऊपर आपने बोला जैसे हम रोज चला रहे हैं जैसे कल आएगा परसों आएगा इससे पहले एक और न्यूज़ थी NSE का IPO सर वो कब तक आएगा
वो आप NSE से पूछिए क्योंकि IPO तो उनको लाना है हाँ I think it should be coming soon after we fully do it all the formalities regarding settlement. I won't hazard a guess about the time. I'll have
Sir,
to
has the
calculate.
sir has the high powered committee met for this NSE settlement which they have filed for the co-location? It was supposed to happen this month, right? If you can comment, if the high powered committee has
Not
met,
yet,
not for this specific.
Not yet.
Just because they are taking up, we don't monitor that.
Hi, I'm Ananya from Financial Express. Is there any update on?
But we do have progress on this. Some of those outstanding issues, we have now new chairman in place in NSE. So there were many such issues were there which are getting resolved.
Is there any update on the changes to the conflict of interest code? The committee was formed in last board meeting.
We expect the committee to be submitting this report this month, later this month. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I had one last question. On the finfluencer issue, I wanted to know if there are any more finfluencers that are under SEBI's radar and is SEBI relooking at the regulation, making it more stricter or with respect to definitions and all?
Influencers who are violating the law will always be on SEBI's radar.
Any help from the Ministry of IT on this with respect to the digital platforms? There were reports that SEBI had reached out to the ministry to engage with digital platforms. Any update on that?
We are engaging with the digital platform and we are getting good cooperation from all the platform providers, Google, Meta and all that, and several things are taken down. Right now about 80,000 cumulatively has been taken down across platforms.
Ad per se, like if I am placing an ad where I am claiming that I'll give you this X amount of return, so Meta obviously has the guidelines in place. But what if I'm not placing an ad? I am just placing content on Meta using social Facebook or for that there is a small loophole over there.
देखिए उसमें हमारे दो तरह के हम काम कर रहे हैं। एक तो हम कह रहे हैं कि कोई भी यदि कंटेंट है और उसमें इस तरह की बात होती है जो सभी रूल्स को वायलेट करता है तो उसको टेक डाउन वैसे ही करेंगे। तो उसका मैंने बताया कि 80,000 ऐसे साइट्स हो। दूसरा ये कि बिजनेस स्क्वीज करने की बात है कि एडवर्टाइजमेंट रेवेन्यू ना मिले ऐसे साइट्स को जो कि रजिस्टर्ड ना हो, तो वो मेटा उस हिसाब से चेक करके थ्रू APIs कि ये रजिस्टर्ड है कि नहीं, वो उससे उनको वो डिनाई कर सकता है। तो ये दोनों तरफ से काम है, अलग अलग चीजें हैं बट दोनों इफेक्टिव हैं।
अगर मैं SEBI रजिस्टर्ड हूँ और मैंने वो अपने YouTube या कहीं पे भी डाला है, तो फ्रॉडस्टर और स्कैमस्टर, because people are not this much aware that this
नहीं, लोगों के तो अब वो तो मेरे ख्याल मेरा ही डीप फेक बन के भी घूम रहा होगा, तो उसको भी बीच बीच में हमें करना पड़ता है। तो ये सब समस्या जो है ये काफी मतलब जटिल है, लेकिन इसको कंटिन्यूअसली बेसिस पे हम लोग रिमूव करते हैं कंटेंट को, तो ये उसके ही पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से नहीं है। कमलेश भी कुछ कहना चाहेंगे इस पे।
So there are three things you have mentioned. First is advertisement. So you correctly mentioned that advertisement, any advertisement on Meta platform relating to security market is first verified with us, and then there is a two-factor authentication. Then only they allow that on their three platforms. Google is also going to start that soon. So we have in principle agreed with them. So that advertisement part is taken care of. content part, sir just said that, our media monitoring cell inside SEBI, they regularly trace wrong contents through artificial intelligence and flag it to these platform, and they immediately take it down. We are also working with these platform whether they can do it on their own without us flagging them. So if they can do it, it would be faster and more have better effect. Then your third point was impersonation, fake app and all. So that I think Chairman has already announced that we are also taking some action for that, in the sense that from 1st October, we are also starting that valid UPI app system, which will ensure that the money is going at the right place. Because by impersonating, they are trying to extract money from you, saying that I am actually all wrong advice which they are giving. So those also we are working with these platform that wrong, whether they can track these impersonation on their own using their technology. So that is also being worked upon. So far as payment is concerned, by impersonation, somebody is taking payment to the wrong, let's say fake app of some broker, and the investor is thinking that I am paying to this particular broker, but the money is going somewhere else. That is going to taken care of from 1st October. That new system will start on UPI payments.
So on the second point, as you mentioned that with these platforms too, like you're trying to build a system where you don't have to flag off, but these platforms only can take an action. So is it like some kind of tech bridge is being built where they can use in real time?
So that is once again, we have to work with them, and that initiative they have to take. They have to, be ready to take down on their own. So that is the work that we are still coordinating with them. Whether they will do it, when they will do it, we don't know, but we are working with them because it is also in the interest of their community guideline. Their community guideline says that they should not host any illegal content. So it is also in line with their community guideline, and if they can develop a technology where they can take it down, flag, find out on their own and take it down, that will be better for the ecosystem.
Sir,
Sir,
Rajesh
can
from
I ask
Moneycontrol.
one quick
This
final
is Lalatirju
question?
from the Hindu. One question. As far as your recommendation on the MPO is concerned, and when you talk about large issues, for the benefit of readers, can you tell about some companies, which companies they could be, and when is this new norms likely to come into force? Thank you.
About the companies, we cannot say which companies will come, because there will be, as I said, we have brought in not only 1 lakh, but also another slab between 50,000 and 1 lakh also. So even there also we have slightly given more time into MPS. So there are different range of companies, and from beyond 1 lakh also, earlier it was 1 lakh and above, now there is also 5 lakh slabs. So, and then 15% less than more than 15%. So there will be different companies which will fit in differently. So we can't say about the companies. And regarding the rules, I have clarified only when the government, notifies these rules, from them, then only it will be, because it will be recommended to the government and then they'll take a view. Thank you.
Hi.
When will it happen, we don't know, but it has a very good effect in the sense that big IPOs, big valuation companies, we want them to come and get listed, and retail investors to be part of their growth story. That is what we all want, all entire ecosystem want, and this recommendation to the government is to facilitate that.
May I ask a question on this?
May I also add that, primary market activity is extremely important for us, both for capital formation as also, we have lots of flows. People are trusting the capital market. We have lots of mutual fund flows, SIPs, domestic flows, and hopefully the FPI's flows will also, gain momentum. We will constantly need, newer paper, good quality paper. So primary market are very active in currently also in India, but we want it to be further more active.
Sorry, may I ask a quick question on the single window access for foreign portfolio investors? Is there any way you can give us a measure
in either the number of applications or man hours spent on applications to illustrate the reduction in paperwork or bureaucracy because of this effort? That's one. And second, whilst this will help, will it only help on the periphery? Because the main grouse for the last 2 years has been the additional documentation on account of the beneficial ownership requirements. So do you feel like this will make only a small dent in the process? A welcome dent, but only a small one.
I don't think it is a small initiative. At least that is not what the FPIs we have spoken to. They think it is. I think it's an important, not only a signal, but also a substantive step in terms of compliance. Because also, there will be no such requirement, as you said, disclosure, etc. In any case, we had exempted. Then we increased the threshold from 25,000 crore to 50,000 crore. That was also really welcomed because unnecessary paperwork, unnecessary compliance is actually a problem. I think in many respects, some of the IFSCA proposal will also add value because many of the India is now increasingly becoming a destination for fund management. Many fund managers who are currently in Singapore and other places, they are returning to India. There has been a 9A modifications in income tax law where there was a problem, and that problem has been sorted. So both in domestic as well as in IFSCA, there has been a great deal of fund management activity. And obviously, when you have a greater fund management activity, you will have greater capacity for them to attract funds from different sides. So overall, this will be put together. But we also mentioned that it can pave the way for a further things, provided we look at the other schedules in FEMA and see whether something else can also be added to it, whatever is what we are saying about Swagat.
Sir, Rajesh from Moneycontrol.
Sorry, I'll just add, Brajesh, before that, to supplement to what Chairman mentioned. Look, this is a part of several steps which have been taken since the last 1 year to try and ease the process of registration for FPIs. Specifically on Swagat, there are some improvements for ease of doing business. One, as we mentioned, that now the renewal of the registration will happen once in 10 years as opposed to every 3 years. That's a big pain point which gets removed. This combination of FECI and FEI, in fact, we had one very large sovereign wealth fund, actually a multilateral agency, which had to go through the throes of opening up a separate FECI license. Now, you obviate all that with just one registration. That becomes a KYC for your AIF investments. You also get a registration for FECI, therefore giving a fillip to unlisted investments as well by these FPIs. Over the last year, a lot of steps have been taken to try and ease the registration process. In fact, Aparna, who presented to you, was spearheading many of those. For instance, if you have multiple investment managers, you're one large investor coming through multiple investment managers, the number of cells which have to be filled up when you start a new FPI have been reduced by 45 to 50% in such cases, which is again a big irritant remove. Similarly, there is now an online, monitoring. If you actually do an application for an FPI, you can check what the status of the application is. And if it's stuck with the global custodian, local custodian, with the depository or with SEBI, you can actually reach out and try and resolve that. Beyond that, any application in the common application form, as we call it, going beyond 1 month, SEBI is actually reaching out to either the custodian or to the FPI themselves to figure out what's happening and what is it that we can do to kind of satisfy this. Finally, one quick point. In fact, recently the chairman had a meeting with the governor of RBI, and there is work happening on smoothening up the KYC process further, so that we kind of have a common KYC requirement across both for banks as well as for FPIs, particularly for these Swagat type of entities where there is risk-based, there is a lot of comfort on both sides for us to go as easy as possible. Finally, one last point. Recently, the circular has come out for FPIs with investments only in government bonds. Again, what we have done as SEBI is we have obviated the need for any single documentation beyond what RBI asks. We have said whatever RBI asks for is all that we'll ask for. We don't want anything more than that. So it's an ongoing thing. And as the chairman mentioned, I think in the outreach that he's been doing, or across the world with FPIs. The feedback has been positive. There's more work to be done, but specifically on Swagat, there's been a lot of positive feedback.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor, if I quickly just ask for a...
Just I would like to add one important pain point, and I think which can be easily handled through everyone, the FPIs taking the India digital signature. Because once they do it, there's lots of their, apostilling, the documentation, the legal documentation, which has to be notarized and then sent. That can be changed. That can be obviated with the digital movement of documents. And there we will integrate the India digital signature with the CAF, the Common Application Form, as a package. Because right now, with the same documentation, they can get it, but they are not doing it. And I think once in the outreach program, it turned out this is one of the points. If we sort it, it'll be a very big relief for them on the compliance burden.
I have just a sort of a question to ask about the relaxations for Swagat FIs, and when you've listed the entitlement, you've said exemption from the 50% aggregate contribution cap applicable to NRIs, OCIs, and resident Indian individuals. Can you just explain that to me? I'm not very clear on that one bit.
Sure. Currently, other than certain FPIs from IFSCA, which by the way we allowed recently, there is a cap requirement that you can't have more than 50% of NRIs, OCI holders, or resident Indians in the investor base. This is an old requirement which has been put up for stopping things like round tripping, etc. Now, in the case of the ISCA, where we allowed for 100% NRI, OCI, RI, what we said was that is a mutual fund type of structure in IFSCA, where there is complete visibility on who those investors are. It's a diversified investor base, diversified investment base, independent fund manager. There is pro rata pari passu on the fund. It's a blind pool. Therefore, it's completely above board, and we know that it doesn't matter really who the investors are. We're using a similar kind of approach with respect to Swagat FPI. Because after all, as Chairman mentioned, these are going to be either sovereign wealth funds, where this is a redundant question, or it's going to be things like mutual funds under regulated, under SEC or under UCITS in Europe, etc., where there is a diversified investor base, diversified investment base, blind pool, pro rata, pari passu, independent fund manager, etc. Now, it is actually a pain point for many of these funds, which have possibly minuscule amount of Indian representation, but they have to confirm to us at all points of time that they have less than 50% Indians or OCIs or NRIs in their investor base. And remember, it's a floating population of investor base. Now, they can't give us a blind confirmation. So they actually have to have processes in place to check whether this is the case, even if it is a zero number. So this actually, we are saying for these kind of trusted entities where we are able to verify their status as regulated public retail funds, this requirement is not there.
One final question. Can you give us any insight into the number of FPIs in the country, whether there's been any decline in the number registered with SEBI over the last 6 months?
It's only been increasing. It's almost 12,000
now. Great. Then can you give us the increased number, as of whatever the last date is that you might have
it's
that
data? It's about 12,000 right now.
Versus what it might have been, let's say, same time last year?
10,500 2 years ago, a year back.
Okay, thank you.
We're seeing about 100 applications per month, roughly.
100 applications per month.
Is that right, Aparna? Roughly 100 a month.
Is there a particular geography that you think many of these applications are coming from?
It's across the board. We haven't taken a look.
There isn't anything that
the
stands
largest
out.
number, as you know, comes from the US.
Sure.
So, and the NSDL website has a list of the AUM-wise, what are the numbers from different geographies.
Okay, may I confirm that this rate or pace of 100 is
actually
higher than what it used to be?
It's higher than what it was a year back.
It's higher than, can you give?
But we'll give you the.
I would love to, because if you've seen an acceleration in
Aparna, we
pace,
can get that
speaks in contrast to what we're seeing them do in terms of investments. But at least there are more FPIs are registering in the country.
Oh, yeah. There is definitely higher registration happening. We are also tracking, as I said, the aging of the registration process. And the moment it goes beyond a certain threshold, 1 month, 2 months, there are follow-up actions that we take up.
Is there any color you can give us on what types of FPIs these are, whether they're large public funds or smaller, more private funds that are choosing to sort of now look at India? Because I think for the longest time, India was not on the radar of, let's say, South American family offices or East Asian family offices. It now seems to be. Is there any more color you can give us?
There's a lot of data available on the depository websites, as you know, which gives you AUM by geography, which gives you the type of fund. Is it a regulated, bank or a institution or a sovereign wealth fund, etc. There's a lot of data available there. Take a look at it. But the specific thing that Sir mentioned, the data on how many registrations have happened, that we can separately provide to you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sir, Rajesh from Moneycontrol. Sir, recently you you did a session for bankers to make them aware about insider trading. So, there was any specific trigger for such kind of crash course for them? And also, if you are considering for other kind of professionals for this?
I think media always discovers some conspiracy, even if we want to develop. Tomorrow, if we call you and saying कि चलिए बात करते हैं कि कुछ चीजें हम आपको समझाएं और एक सेशन करते हैं, तो आप कहेंगे कि ये क्यों किया सेशन, इसकी क्या थी, क्या हुआ, किसमें किस बात पे आई, तो
बैंकर से ही आपने क्यों किया, इस पर सवाल था।
नहीं, बैंकर्स के साथ ही नहीं हम कर रहे हैं, हम और भी करेंगे।
हमारा कौन होगा सर, वो हमारे लिए खबर होगी।
नहीं, हमारा ये पर्पस है कि जो लार्ज एंटिटीज है, बैंकों को इसलिए किया क्योंकि उनकी दो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है। उनकी सिर्फ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी अपनी ही नहीं है, उनकी फिड्यूशरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी भी है। उनके पास और कंपनीज का भी डेटा रहता है, तो उनको और भी केयरफुल रहना है। यदि मान लो उनके सिस्टम में कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन लीक हो जाती है उनके सिस्टम से, क्योंकि उसने दी हुई है प्राइस सेंसिटिव, सो दैट इज वाई हमने बैंकों को चुना, बिकॉज उनके पास दो तरह की इंफॉर्मेशन, अपनी और दूसरी जो दूसरे उनके क्लाइंट्स की एज फिड्यूशरीज। सो देयरफॉर, बट दिस इज अ काइंड ऑफ थिंग व्हेन वी से कि हमको, क्योंकि उससे हमें बहुत सारे सुझाव भी मिले हैं, द प्रैक्टिकल डिफिकल्टी, हाउ टू डू इट, टेक्नोलॉजिकली उसको कैसे हम कर सकते हैं। So maybe we can actually do a lot of things. So once we talk and do some discussions, we always get some good ideas in order to reform and make things better for everyone.
Compliance to law is achieved through many ways. Tool for voluntary compliance. You go to the people who are expected to follow the law and explain them, hear them, what are their difficulties. As well said, we got very good suggestions also, and they all appreciated it very much. So, law is to be compliant. It's not necessary that we have everybody to comply the law. We also go to them out.
Yes, sir. Sir, एक सवाल और, एनुअल
For
रिपोर्ट
any further questions or clarification, you may please write our press email ID. Let's conclude it.
सर एनुअल रिपोर्ट में आपने मार्जिन ट्रेडिंग फंडिंग फ्रेमवर्क को कॉम्प्रिहेंसिवली रिव्यू करने की बात कही है, तो उस पर क्या है सर, अभी कुछ प्रोग्रेस है, बातचीत हुई है कुछ?
इससे बताएंगे उसके बाद जो प्रोग्रेस।